Welcome to This Week in Morgan County. I'm your host, Russell Mokhiber. Our guest this week is Tracy Cannon. Tracy is an organizer with the Eastern Panhandle Protectors. Tracy, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Russell.
What brought you to the Eastern Panhandle?
Well, when I was a kid, my dad used to go to Charlestown Racetrack from where we lived in D.C., and I just thought the area was beautiful, and that's why I've come here.
How long have you been here?
I moved here when I was 18 to go to Shepherd College, which is now Shepherd University, and have stayed here since then, except for leaving to go to school in Germany.
You've been organizing the last couple years against the pipeline that's being put in by Mountaineer Gas. Why did you get into doing that? Why are you organizing against it?
Well, right from the beginning, I could see that the gas company was using predatory practices against the landowners. The landowners felt manipulated and bullied and didn't appreciate this gas company coming in and forcing a pipeline on them. And there's many reasons. There's environmental reasons, there's local pollution reasons, and there's just the fact that gas itself is unsafe. We've seen that with the accident near Moundsville recently.
And that was a Trans-Canada pipeline, the same company that's proposing to dig under the Potomac River just west of Hancock to connect with this pipeline.
Correct.
What caused that explosion, by the way, a couple days ago in Moundsville?
They aren't sure yet, but people have speculated that it may have been a failed weld.
Interestingly, you put out a report yesterday that you went to each one of the you went to the public documents that are available publicly, and you looked at how much the gas company paid each one of the 119 parcel owners. And you came up with a total of $1.18 million they paid in total.
Correct.
But there was indications that the company took advantage of much of the population that it was seeking these rights away from, including elderly people, and sort of coerced them early on to sign deals to get far less money than others. Give us some of the details of what you found.
Well, for one thing, about half of the contracts were signed between July and September of 2016, which was before there was much public awareness about the pipeline. There had only been one newspaper article that I knew about before that time covering the issue. Very few people knew about it. I myself didn't find out about it at all until August of 2016. Half of people signed in that window of time without awareness about what the pipeline could do and without much contact with each other. So people were treated by the gas company in isolation, and they didn't have an opportunity to organize with their neighbors to see how much other people were getting paid. And in that window of time, a lot of people were taken advantage of and paid quite a low amount of money.
In the range of payments, there were a couple people who were paid only $500.
Right, and one party that was paid $113,000. That was a very large parcel, but you can see the difference. There were two people who were paid $500, about, let's see here, 59 landowners who received less than $4,000. So 59 out of those 119 got less than $4,000 to have a pipeline on their property for perpetuity, with all the risk that comes with that.
And we put up details of the report at Morgan County USA, and you'll find it also on Eastern Panhandle Protectors on their Facebook page. But there, you also tell the story of a pretty large parcel, I think it was 38 acres.
Correct.
Where the landowners were pressured to take very little money, maybe $1,500 or so.
Right.
And tell us about that situation.
Well, those folks signed early. I believe it was September of 2016. They're a very nice older couple. I went to meet them by way of their neighbor recently, and their neighbor told me that the older man has dementia, and that the older woman has a heart condition that she's had to be hospitalized for recently. So they're not in good health, and I think they just got bamboozled. They're very nice people. They were eager to talk to me, and they felt the gas company had been kind to them. And I'm just astonished that the gas company would just do that to somebody.
And I remember hearing stories early on where many older landowners would be approached by representatives from the gas company, and they thought they didn't have any choice in anything. They were presented with these documents, and they felt that this was sort of like a state action. It was like a governmental action, and that they had no choice to do anything, to ask for more money, to take the gas company to court, to organize with their neighbors.
Correct. That's what I've heard on a number of occasions. People have told me that they were told, if you don't take this money now, you might not get anything. We'll take you to court, we'll sue you for eminent domain, and you'll lose, and we'll take your land for nothing, which is completely false. They have to give people fair compensation.
How many landowners actually took the gas company to court to challenge their rights under eminent domain?
Only one, the Keesuckers of Morgan County. Other people, the gas company filed a suit against 3 other parties. One of them was sued, a lady named Brenda Hoffman, who lives in California, who was unable to show up for her hearing because she couldn't afford to fly here. But she owns land on Sleepy Creek and was very distraught to hear that they were going under Sleepy Creek at her property. She said she bought that property to try and help preserve the creek, and she was very distressed by the fact that they were taking her to court. But they took her to court, they took the Keesuckers to court, and they filed suits against 2 other parties, but then those parties ended up settling without having to go to court.
What is the status of the pipeline now?
The pipeline is currently being built. Pipeline's been buried in Berkeley Springs along 522 and along Fairview Drive. And it's in the process of being built at Pius Ridge Road and Cane Lane, where the Keesuckers live. Pipeline's been buried on one side of the Keesuckers' property and not on the other. Other areas along Sleepy Creek, in the Burnt Mill Road area, it's being constructed at this moment.
And
unfortunately,
we recently had a pretty bad flooding here. What impact did that have on the pipeline construction from what you've seen?
Well, there were a lot of cases where the erosion barriers failed, and muddy water from where they've torn up and graded the land, where they've removed all the vegetation and there's bare earth showing. Muddy water collected behind the erosion barriers that are supposed to be holding back that sort of thing, and the water actually flowed over top of the barriers, like the barriers here, and the water was literally just pouring over the edge. Muddy water into streams. Yeah.
Erosion barriers failed.
Yes, in several places.
One of the pictures that's posted at Morgan County USA to illustrate your article is a picture of the pipeline cutting through a residential neighborhood, and the 2 homes are really close together, and this pipeline goes like apparently right through the property line, or right on the property line.
Right.
And I'm wondering your thoughts on if there was an explosion. The Moundsville TransCanada explosion was in a remote area.
Right.
But what if there's an explosion in a residential area like that? Do we have any indication of what kind of damage could be done?
Well, that picture that you're referring to was taken of 2 houses on Herkheimer Lane in Hedgesville. The 2 houses are about 70 feet apart, and it goes directly between the 2 pieces of property, so it's no more than 35 feet from either house. If the pipeline were to explode in that area, or any of the other areas where the pipeline is similarly close to someone's house, there would be loss of life. It wouldn't be a harmless pipeline explosion where the pipeline just blew up and left a crater. There'd be a crater where someone's house used to be and where their children used to be sleeping.
Then the pipeline, the Mountaineer gas pipeline has been given approval in West Virginia. It's being constructed. How much of it has been completed, would you say?
Maybe 10%, roughly.
And what's the timeline for completing it that you know of?
I believe they want to be finished in the fall of this year. By November is what I've heard. The rain might be slowing them down.
Yet, the Trans-Canada pipeline that will bring fracked gas from Pennsylvania into this pipeline has not been, the construction has not been begun.
Correct.
Have they received all of their permissions to construct that?
Not yet.
What else is holding that up?
There's a Board of Public Works approval, and the FERC, the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, has to approve it still.
And there are campaigns to put pressure on the Board of Public Works in Maryland and FERC to deny approval. What are the chances that might happen that you know of?
The chances of that happening are rather limited.
And what makes you think so? Because apparently there's 2 out of the 3 members of the Board of Public Works who are pretty open-minded to environmental concerns. Have you, for example, written to the Board of Public Works in Maryland?
No, I haven't.
And have you given up on that? Have you thinking there's no hope there?
From what I understand, the FERC decision can overrule the Board of Public Works. And for that reason, it might not be very useful.
Okay. So when do you anticipate construction of the Trans-Canada pipeline under the Potomac River?
That's a good question. I don't know.
Okay. And what happens if, for some reason, Trans-Canada does not get permission to build that? Then we have there's been a lot of destruction in Morgan and Berkeley County. They've gone ahead without knowing whether that pipeline is going to be built. What happens to this pipeline if that pipeline isn't built?
Well, I would be happy to see it sit disused, unused. They don't have to use it just because they built it. If there's no gas to supply to that pipeline, then there'll never be a pipeline explosion. It will be a huge waste of time and energy and the destruction of the land.
There was some talk, though, that even if the Trans-Canada pipeline under the Potomac isn't built, there might be a use for it by the gas company. What would that be?
It has been said informally on social media that they might build some sort of storage facility for gas and get gas from the line that comes up from the south, send it out here to Morgan County, and place it in some sort of storage facility to hold it, which is a hazardous thing.
That brings up the question of the local politicians who've been pushing this. No local politician that we know of, or elected politician that we know of, has stood against this pipeline.
Unfortunately.
And we know that, for example, many of our local politicians are taking money even directly from Trans-Canada.
Yep.
And they've been up to Maryland to support the Trans-Canada pipeline.
That's right.
And I'm wondering, they argue that this pipeline is needed. It's an infrastructure project that will help economic development. Will it?
Not necessarily. They claim that it's needed for development in Jefferson County, but the Jefferson County portion of the pipeline actually has yet to be approved by the Public Service Commission. And besides that,
that's the West Virginia Public Service Commission.
Correct. And yeah, they don't necessarily need it. There are other ways to power industry in Jefferson County.
But our local politicians, Senator Charles Trump, House Majority Leader Darrell Coles, support it because they think it will be a boon to economic activity here in Morgan County. What evidence is there of that?
Not much. What you see if you go to the pipeline sites where it's actually being built is license plates from other states. The men doing this work are from Pennsylvania, Louisiana, Utah. That's where the people have come from who are actually building the pipeline. And once the pipeline's been built, there are no maintenance workers really. They maintain it, they monitor it remotely from Charleston.
But I think the broader thing that they're saying is that this natural gas will be used to bring businesses that rely on natural gas to Morgan County.
The only place in the Morgan County that plans on using the gas, supposedly, is the U.S. Silica plant. And from what I understand, they only have 5 more years to operate because the sand's going to run out. So even if it's useful for U.S. Silica, it'll only be useful for 5 more years.
There's been some discussion that there's another pipeline, perhaps on the drawing boards, that will take the gas from the Route 9 pipeline south to the industrial park in the southern part of the county, that this will draw businesses to the industrial park. Have you heard anything about this, and what are your thoughts on that?
You mean the industrial park in Berkeley County?
In Morgan County.
I don't know of it.
Okay.
Sorry.
You've been one of the more active organizers against the pipeline. You actually do hands-on work, and I want to ask you about what we call the nonprofit industrial complex. There are many major environmental groups who've jumped on this issue to try and stop it. What are your thoughts on their efforts and the impact that they've had on this effort?
Well, they've been helpful. Groups like CCAN have promoted our issue and got it a lot of publicity over in Maryland. There was an effort for quite a while to try and convince the governor of Maryland to reject the project, which he could have done. Unfortunately, I don't think they were aware that Governor Hogan is as pro-gas as he has turned out to be, unfortunately. Unfortunately that failed. Governor Hogan did not reject the pipeline. In fact, he's trying to boost natural gas infrastructure in the state of Maryland, even though they banned fracking. The fracking ban gave us hope that he might, reject the pipeline project with the 401 water certification. Unfortunately, he didn't do so. So what I would say is that the groups over in Maryland did the best they could, but they didn't know who they were working with in the governor of Maryland.
Would your preference be to move West Virginia and Morgan County and Berkeley County and the Eastern Panhandle away from fossil fuels?
Absolutely.
And how close are we to that in your mind?
Well, we could be so much closer if there was only political will behind it. If people like our county commissioners and our delegates and state senators were interested in such projects as opposed to being interested in these gas projects, that would be a big start. The Mountain View Solar exists, and they do a lot of work, but they're not being promoted like they could be. They're not being helped with tax credits like the government of West Virginia could do. West Virginia keeps leaning on gas as if that's going to save our state, but at what cost? People could have died in that Moundsville accident, and if the pipeline were to explode here in Morgan County or Berkeley County, there's almost certain to be a loss of life because of just the proximity of the pipeline to so many homes. There are numerous instances where the pipeline comes within 50 to 100 feet of people's homes.
And finally, now that the pipeline is going through, what is going to be your work in connection with this pipeline? What are your next steps?
Well, we're still working with landowners to try to help them protect themselves and test their water and just protect themselves from the gas company in general. And also we're trying to warn residents of Jefferson County before the Public Service Commission approves the project of the gas company's practices in terms of the way they treat people with the contracts. The contracts are so disadvantageous to the landowners, and people need to know that, and that's where we're going next.
And if people want more information about Eastern Panhandle Protectors, where do they go?
They can go to Facebook and look at our Facebook page called Eastern Panhandle Protectors.
Tracy Cannon, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Russell.
And thank you for watching This Week in Morgan County.